All right, we are going to be making this animation here. Posted it on Instagram, and a lot of you guys wanted a tutorial for it, and it's pretty simple. Really, the main idea is a really cool inverting effect and getting the displacement to sort of be really dramatic. So let's go ahead and build that. Most of the time I'd build this in geometry nodes. I'll do it the easiest way. So we'll go ahead and get a circle. And then we're going to go ahead and change it, the fill type to Ingon. I'll give the vertices of 80. And then we'll bring the radius up, something around here. And then I'm going to hit tab for edit mode, I to inset, and just kind of decide how thick you want that ring to be. So something like that. I'm going to hit X and click faces. So now we have a ring. In the project file, I built the ring in geometry node. So if you want to check that out, you can. It's pretty simple. But this is just quicker and easier. So I'm going to go ahead now, head to geometry nodes, and I'm just going to customize my window how I want to make it. And then let's go ahead. We'll get a camera. Just set up our camera. And now we need to distribute points on this guy. So I'm going to click new here in geometry nodes, and we're going to get a distribute points on faces right there. And then just get it really dense, something pretty high until it's just like a solid object. And then we're going to do a set point radius of 0.005. That is the size that I had in my final animation, so that's what we're going to go with. And then now we can go ahead. I'm going to go here into the Eevee render engine. So go here to this camera icon, switch it over to Eevee. We don't need the heaviness of cycles for this. So what we'll do is we'll get a set material node. We'll go here to the materials, click new, and I'm going to get a emission material and just grab it right there and bring up the strength to something like 50 or 60. So now we have this. We want these objects to glow, and that is going to create this really cool effect when we invert it. So what I'll do first is get my background here in the world settings to be black, and then I'm going to render this out. And then let's head to the compositor, and I'm going to click new, and that's going to bring up our image. And then we'll just go ahead, we'll get a Shift A and search, get a glare node, set this to bloom, and we want lots of bloom. And then if we get an invert color node, it's going to do this. Basically, it's going to take that, the kind of glowing effect, this faded kind of foggy look, and the invert is going to do something to it. I don't exactly know why it creates this really interesting kind of hollowed out sci-fi looking effect, but it does, and it's really cool. And so if we go back here to geometry nodes, right up here, if you want to view your compositing effects in real time, you hit this drop down and click on either camera, and it will only show the compositing effects when you're viewing the camera, or always. So now everywhere, every time you're looking around, you can see it. So you can see how this inverting effect works. When objects are really bunched up closer together, there's more glow, there's more glare, so it's going to make that little globby look. And so when we go out to kind of the full view, it just globs everything. And then if I click, make sure you click on all your particles. If you bring up that glow, the emission strength, it's going to sort of make this very cool effect. I'm going to bring my strength back to like 100, maybe 80. So again, the less, if you make it not so bright, it's not going to work. You want your object to be glowing pretty significantly. And what I want is for the brightness to be bright enough to make this whole thing solid, so that when we displace the particles, that's when we see particles. That's the whole idea. And so now what we can do is I'm going to highlight these two and hit G and give them some space. And then right here, right before the set material, we are going to get a set position node. Set position is going to move the particles around. So we're going to get a noise texture, and I'm going to use color because color is going to displace it on X, Y, and Z. So plug it there, and then I'm going to click normalize to keep it in the center. And then we're going to get a vector math node, and we're going to set it to scale, and that's going to be like a strength. So for scale of 0, it's like this noise texture isn't affecting anything. As we bring it up, we get a really cool effect. So we're just going to keep it on a scale of 1 at the moment. Now what I want to do is to not have this entire ring be displaced. I only want sort of certain spots to have displacement, like you can see in the final animation. So the way we can do it is mix this effect with just nothing. So we're going to get a mix vector, and we're going to mix having a noise texture with having nothing. And that's going to be here with this factor slider. So we're going to get another noise texture. So let's give some more space. I'm going to use the color. I'm going to click on normalize. And then we need to get a RGB curves to crunch in some of this to make it look better. So RGB curves, and the way this effect is going to work is take this and flip it. So take this guy here, take this guy here, and then if I just go back to just regular view, see if we can see our particles. It's starting to work once we flipped it, because let's flip it back here, and really nothing's happening. If it's, see that's kind of how it looked before with just the noise texture. When we go ahead and flip this, it's going to create this interesting effect where now if I bring my scale up to a very small number, you can see how some of these are flat. So if I bring up my scale here, you can see how some of the spaces are not affected, and you need to go ahead and uncheck normalize, and that's going to help that work better. So now this is the effect that I'm looking for. And then you can bring the detail down if you want, you can bring the detail up. Now I want to animate this effect. So what we need to do is create a mapping setup. So we need to get 2 vector nodes. Sorry, vector math nodes. What am I doing? So we need to get 2 vector math nodes. And then we need to get a vector rotate. In fact, for this effect, we only need a vector rotate node, rotate vector node. And then we need to get a position node in order for this bit of information to work. So plug that into the vector, and then if you play with the Z, you're going to be able to move this around. So I'm going to go ahead and go from 3D to 4D so I can decide, like, okay, if I want a different pattern, I can get a different pattern. And then you can play with the scale to see how much. And then I'm going to bring up the strength as well. So if we go back to the render view and then make sure. So now we have this effect. All we need to do is animate it. So I would go ahead and give myself about 500 frames here on your end. It is, the effect is quite fast. So the more frames, the more smooth and controlled it's going to look. I'm going to bring up my scale a little bit more, something like this, and then just bring up the effect of it, something like this. And then let me check my render to make sure my glare isn't too much. My glare is kind of a lot. So bring it down. It's solid enough. And then maybe if I actually bring up my scale somewhere, there we go. So I'm going to render it, make sure the final effect looks really good. And then again, all we have to do is animate it. So in your preferences, in your animation, make sure the default interpolation is linear so that the loop is actually a loop, seamlessly that is. And then the animation is just going to be rotating the texture. So we're going to go back to frame 0 right here on the Z. I'm going to hit I, which, I mean, it's on all 3 axes, and then go to the very end and type in 360 on the Z, hit I again, and you're going to get this effect that when you look at it in the render view, it is going to look really, really cool. All right, I'm almost done recording and there's a bunch of noise outside. Hopefully it's not super loud, but that is the effect, and then you would just go ahead and render out your sequence. So it's cool. It's incredibly simple. I think the coolest part of the effect is this invert situation that just makes it look cool is the only word I can think of today. But hope you guys enjoy it. The project file is attached below. Again, thank you guys for watching. You can join Patreon for free. Also check out the tiers if you want to see some more exclusive content. And I'll see you guys in the next one.